Okay, so what we've got here are our guaranteed trimmings. We know that there's really not much else that can be done with these particular things that we have laying out on the table other than make them into a ground product. So what we're gonna do, this is where you can really spend as much time as you sort of want. Each one of us is gonna have to make a choice where you feel comfortable with your the extent of the trimming, and you say that's now bone. I'm gonna discard it. I've got the trimmings that I want. So that's personal preference. How much time? We're pretty experienced at this. We know kind of where that balance is between, you know, I've got what I can get here. My time is more important. It's time to get rid of that and go. So we're gonna take what we know are guaranteed trimmings off of the bone, and that way we can discard these bones. Once again, like I said, if you're using bones for bone broth, these would not be my first choice. We've got some marrow bones on the other quarters that we're gonna use.
Now, something like this with this neck, you could certainly cut this into roasts if you would like. That's completely up to you. However, in this application, we are going to go ahead and take this neck and turn it into trimmings for further processed items.
So one of the things that we like to say is when you're, and you saw, I actually pulled that. One of the things that you'll learn is not all the work has to be done by the knife. Sometimes you have an option where you can just sort of pull something apart. Another thing that we like to focus on is we don't take the product off the table. We always want to leave it on the table because that's going to be a lot safer. So yeah, don't pick it up and start whittling in midair.
We call this air boning.
Yeah, we don't want to see you do that. And then the other thing is that generally speaking, what we do first is we take everything we can off of the bone. And so what that means is we don't necessarily start from the outside and work in. We start at the bone and work back. So what we'll do is we'll peel it, and like I said, I'm pulling on this as I debone it, but we want to start right against the bone and take this trimmings off. And then if we have something in the trimmings we don't like, we can take it out. But don't necessarily start from the outside and work your way down to the bone. Start at the bone and work your way to the outside. It's going to be a lot more efficient to do it that way.
All great points. And through this process, you know, we don't want to be wasteful. So we're going to spend as much time as we need to get these bones pretty clean. Now you could spend all day doing this. There's some common sense that plays a role there where you just simply can't get it trimmed out any longer. We are going to do our best though to make sure nothing in fact goes to waste on this animal.
The other thing is this deer's pretty lean. We will be adding some pork fat into the trimmings, which is always a great point to, there's personal preference there. Once again, what you want to use. We will sometimes find that taking the venison fat out of the product is maybe a little bit more pleasant for the taste. Some folks like to leave it in the product. That can also be determined on what you're actually working with. This is a buck. It's probably wiser for us to remove the fat. Once again, personal preference. Now, one thing that I'm doing here is I'm going to be actually making these into fairly small portion sizes because of the size of our grinder. That's also subject to what you're working with. In this case, we found that if they're about golf ball size, it seems to be about the right size. So we'll sort of cut these into length and then cut them again like so. And that's going to allow us to get them fed through our grinder just real nice, and also blended with our seasoning that we're going to be adding. Gives a lot of surface area, so we'll have a really good product.
And if there's any whole pieces in here that you would see fit for maybe a stew meat, by all means, go ahead and cut little pieces like this for some venison stew meat.
That's a great point. We like to cut lean whole muscle pieces, make great stew, which don't have a lot of sinew or something like that in them, because you know that will yield a very pleasant eating experience. So as we work through this, we're making a really nice pile. Another tip: turn the products over, make the angles work for you. Don't find yourself that product there on the table can just be flipped around in any direction that makes it more convenient for you to extract the muscle from it.
Let's talk a little bit about the sinew in the meat, the gristle. With the proper grinding, as you can see, maybe a piece like this has a few gristle lines in it. Certainly the heavy ones you do want to get. In the top of this neck, there's a yellow cord, and you definitely need to get that big thick yellow cord out, but you certainly do not have to pick through every little thin membrane you find. Those will grind up just fine. You do have to get the thick ones.
So I've determined that I've got just about everything that I can get off of this back. The other thing you have to be cautious of, if you really start digging, you are going to start getting some more of that actual connective tissue, and the more of that's in your product, the more connective tissue to muscle ratio, I guess if you will, the more chance you have of hitting that when you're actually chewing on it. Here's another a good opportunity for you just to kind of visually inspect your product as you're going through it, looking for any hair or possibly a piece of contamination or something that you really wouldn't want to be in your final product. Just go ahead and trim it out of there. Use the edge of your knife to get it cut out of there. So maybe a quick visual inspection. Keep your surface area. There's a chunk of that yellow cord, so we'll go ahead and extract that. If you've got a set of work lights, go ahead and set those up. That's gonna really help you out if you've got a nice, well-lit surface, so that way you can stay on top of what you're trying to do. And it's just really nice when you have a good, well-prepared deer, because this process is just gonna keep rolling along, going really well for you. And I'm telling you, we've got some really nice looking meat here that's gonna turn out some wonderful products when we add our seasoning to the meat. It's really gonna enhance and not mask the flavor. It's just gonna enhance the flavor of the actual venison and leave us with some of the best tasting venison that you've ever experienced in your entire life. You'll have the personal pride of having done it
yourself
at home.
One thing we do need to talk about, and we will more in the further videos, but it is the glands in the venison. I just located one right here inside the flank. So we have a gland. You definitely want to remove all those glands out of your deer trim. And there's one located in the round that's probably the most important. We remove them all, and we will show you where that's located.
So one thing that you're gonna find is when you're trimming this out, now this particular piece, I had a flank here, and the interior of it has just some pieces of hair. It's bloodshot, and what I've been able to do is just separate that. It's a very thin piece. Now there's two choices here. You can simply discard that if you don't feel like the value is there as far as what you're gonna do, or you can use that fish filleting method. And here's where you want to flip it. You want to put the dirty side down, and you're going to use your knife off of the corner of the table. So you're actually going to use the leverage that this will gain you, and you can find that angle where you can start actually removing just a very thin portion if you feel like you need to save. Now I've got that clean piece extracted from there, and I can add that to my trimmings pile. And the blood and the hair are all contained there, and you can get rid of that. And then the rest of this flank's looking beautiful, nice and clean. Seth mentioned it, a little bit of silver skin here. If you feel like that silver skin is easy to grab and you want to just get rid of it, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, your ratio of muscle to connective tissues is going to stay really high, and you won't have to worry about any of that. You can just by sort of grabbing the thicker pieces of cartilage or the stuff that's obvious, you're going to be in really good shape and not have to worry about picking every little piece out.
Another little pointer, as you can see, Scott and I are not wearing a cut-proof glove. We actually, being in the business, we're not comfortable wearing them. However, if you're if you're not experienced with a knife, you know, working in close quarters to your hand, you might want to go ahead and invest in a cut-proof glove just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, really, obviously safety is something that you always want to be mindful of. It's not going to be very fun completing this process once you've cut yourself. So just be aware of that. Seth and I are wearing gloves. There's nothing special about them. They're just simply latex gloves because that's what we're accustomed to wearing. It allows us to interchange between different things without washing our hands. In other words, we can just peel the glove off and put a new pair on. That's personal preference. You can pick these gloves up anywhere, Amazon or online or just about anywhere that sells game processing is going to have gloves similar to what we have here.
If you pick up the butcher kit from Outdoor Edge, it does come with a couple pairs of gloves for you in it.
Right. Throw a couple in your hunting pack for field dressing too. Makes it really convenient, especially since a lot of us are carrying phones. You want to turn from one thing to the other. You can pull the gloves off and you're just simply ready to go.
So as you can see here, I'm just taking my knife and cutting down through these ribs. It's real easy to just take your knife and just run it right along the rib, and you can pull these pieces of meat out in between the ribs real easy like that.
There we are, a beautiful pile of nice wholesome venison trimmings that are going to be turned into some incredibly tasting products with our Bearded Butcher Blend seasoning incorporated into them.
If you hunt, you should never have a family member that says, I don't eat venison. If you follow these steps, they're gonna love it.